Welcome to bexbugoutsurvivor, and on this one I have some stoves that are basically run on alcohol, and the tests I want to perform for these type of alcohol stoves will be fuel efficiency and boil times, and also what is important to me is how long it takes to bloom. The type of stoves I'll be looking at, also these little homemade stoves. So given not every pot fits on the same stand, I'm choosing to use this 1 litre aluminium pot, and I have a video also looking at different pots, whether aluminium is quicker than stainless steel versus titanium. This is the 1 litre aluminium pot, and this fits on all the pot stands I'm about to show you. I really wanted to use my BCB cup, but like I said, it doesn't fit on some of the given stands. A selection of different stoves, and this is the lineup of the usual suspects. So starting from left to right, a little homemade Wicking stove, a penny stove, and I'm using a gold nugget for that. I'm not a cheapskate, doesn't have to be a penny, just needs to cover the pour hole. We had a look at this not so long ago, the Bex stove, really simple design. This incorporates the pot stand, this incorporates the pot stand. The penny stove does not, hence needing a pot stand. And finally, everyone's bushcraft favourite, the Trangia, and that kind of pot stand, and hence me needing this pot. My 58 doesn't want to sit on, it's a shame. So all the stoves are empty. I have a criteria, I can only use 30mm in each. I'm not going to assist in the bloom time. I have techniques, I can fire this one up quickly. I have techniques, I can fire penny stoves up quickly. I'm not going to use them techniques, I'm just going to light them. The pot, the test pot, 300mm. Now for this experiment I won't be putting a lid on it, but I think we'll start with this. I'm going to pour 30mm into the Wicking stove. This top bit here acts as the pot stand, this inner part acts as the fuel well, and the rope around the edge of this acts as the wick. Won't be assisting the flame at all to get it into a bloom. Some of these stoves don't like being dry ignited. They require a certain time to bloom. Now the fuel wicks into the rope, and it's a pretty new rope, so I don't know how this is going to affect it, but light from dry start, or not a big problem lighting that at all. That was a quick bloom. Start the timer, no lid on to make it fair for every pot, no assisting the flame into ignition, just 30mm of fuel to see if I can bring this to a boil, and then see if we can maintain a rolling boil. I found one of the better ways, rather than putting a lid on to get a faster boil, is to block the wind entirely. Coming up to the 3-minute mark now. I still have flame. Just gone past the 5-minute mark. Just starting to get some bubbles. It would have been nicer to see a quicker boil. Still got flame, so there must be fuel. And next we'll be testing one of these other stoves. All my testing is done outdoors in a real life environment. I don't do indoor testing for outdoor equipment. That is as good as a rolling boiler is going to get. 6:47. I have a concentrated build-up of heat just in one corner, not the rolling boil you would be used to seeing with stainless steel, for instance. Fuel's just about to die out. It's not really assisting the boil now. Just gone past the 9-minute mark. As you can see, it is hand touch pretty quickly, which is also important if you want to pack up in a hurry. This little homemade Bex stove, love this to bits. I think it is possible to run some of these stoves on just 20mm, so 100mm would then give me 5 boils, and 30mm would obviously just give me just over 3 boils per 100mm. To allow it to bloom in its own time. There won't be any assistance. Okay, fast bloom on that. The windshield is a lot taller than the actual pot itself. It stands above it. The flame is almost non-existent. At one point I thought it had gone out. Still there. So the little Bex stove doesn't usually struggle very much. It's easy to light, it's easy to make one. It's very good. But this particular one, it's struggling to maintain the flame, and I think that's because I haven't got that air hole. So that is something to address when I get home. I've opened up the windshield a little, give it a bit more air. I think that was the issue. The Wicking stove didn't need so much air ventilation. This does. 7:07, bubbles are forming. Flame is looking good. This little setup usually does a lot better than this. Like I said, I made the mistake of not giving it a decent enough air draft in the beginning, and it was stifling the oxygen allowance. It's going well now, but it's raining, and again the weather can have quite an adverse effect on your stove systems, be it the temperature, air pressure, and many other different factors. As you can see, for the same amount of fuel we used in the last stove, this is still going. I'm not going to get the rolling boil I will from stainless steel. 10:38. This pot is absolutely terrible, but I do want to do a test to demonstrate just how quick this stainless steel is, and I think that's fuel out 11:33. So the type of pot you're using is absolutely crucial. A wide mouth aluminium pot might be great for doing some food in, and I can just maintain a steady temperature so it won't burn the bottom. For boiling water, wrong decision this. The simple penny stove, I have many variants on this, all different size holes, different air drafts. This is my favourite. This is what works best for this. 30mm, and I won't be assisting the bloom either, I'm just lighting it. A little homemade pot stand for this, which is a bird feeder, that kind of height, and the penny, I'm using the gold coin. Now there may be a blowback effect on this. There's the pop. This little penny stove is leaking fuel. so I won't be able to test this one out. So the famous Trangia, I have the army version at home, which I would have liked to have tested. This is the camper. Now what I'm about to do with this Trangia, you should never ever do. Run it from empty with very little fuel, and 2, never let it run out. Running it dry, you run the risk of it cracking the weld. It's not a good idea, but this is not one of my favourite stoves. I very rarely use it. I was hoping when I bought my first ever Trangia that I could put fuel all the way up to the top in the well, take it out with me in my pocket and get many boils from it. Little did I know at the time, once you finished bringing it to a boil, you then have to top it off before the next boil, and that's how to run these at their peak performance. But I didn't know that then, I do now. But if I've got to keep topping it up after every boil, then I may as well use one of the other stoves. The bloom time without assistance, depending on obviously the bar pressure of the atmosphere, can take a long time. I had to relight it twice, not realising I didn't have flame. If I was to factor in the bloom time as well, I think it might just equal out to the other stoves. Just coming up to the 5-minute mark. But that did come to a boil, and almost 9 minutes on 30 mil, and we still have flame. Among some of the other pots I could have used for this experiment, other than the 1 litre billy, great for food, dire for water, I could have used the aluminium pot that came with the camper 25 Trangia, which is this. And I have this quite large pot, and I think that's a litre and a half. The thing I don't like about this Trangia is it stays hot quite a long time because it's brass, and that is great for maintaining a good hot flame, but terrible if you want to just pick it up, put it in your bag and be on your way. I got that off a flea market, and the camper 25 off a car boot sale. Once again, I'm obligated to tell you that cooking with aluminium in the long term may have health effect implications with Alzheimer's or early onset of Alzheimer's. Do your own research on that. You would have to use aluminium every day of your life really for it to have any effect. If you don't want to take a chance, use stainless steel or titanium. Speaking of stainless steel, it is time to do a boil test with the Bex stove, stainless steel, and for the lid lovers, lid on. 2 Bex stoves. One is slightly larger with its pot stand height, and the pot stand height has quite a dramatic effect on its boil time. And I'll be giving some ventilation also here. So while that boils, I'm going to put an air ventilation in the top of this other Bex stove, and I'd like to see if it does make any kind of difference to the boil time, because it does reduce the flame size not having that little hole I've just put in there. So really I kind of knew the boil times already, and I knew I wanted to test it with the worst pot I have. it's the wrong shape, it's the wrong material. It's great to do food with because it doesn't get as hot, it doesn't stick to the bottom. But for a more rapid boil, you've got to have a good pot. Another great pot I use is the USGI Glacier pot. It is also stainless steel, but it has a thinner wall, and that comes to a boil quite quickly. It also fits with a variety of little homemade stoves. I like these because it has the integrated pot stand. 4 minutes 20. I expect to see bubbles at the bottom of this by now. Just about forming. So I do have a flame there, but as you can see, it's almost being stifled. The Wicking stove is the best. I know that because we've run this test before. That would be good enough to sterilise water there. I'd want to maintain it now for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Flame's gone out at 10 minutes 40. So it maintained a boil. But now let's try the new improved air draft stove. This is hand touch almost 10 seconds later. That's why I like this so much. I have had this working a hell of a lot better. It's all to do with the oxygen. This one here has a higher pot stand, so it's further away from the pot, and I found 1.5 inches between the top of the flame and the bottom of the pan works best for me in my experience. This has got the air hole. Let's run it again. 30mm, get that lit. Again, no assistance with the bloom. It's got to achieve a bloom on its own. And that is how quick the bloom is. So I can introduce the pot quicker. Doesn't seem to be stifling the flame now I've introduced that air hole. Start the timer. Still leave an air draft at the front. And away we go. I'll tell you about the penny stove. It does require a technique to get it into a bloom quicker, and there is a video on how I do that. It's usually a good stove. I made it years ago. I liked it, I kept it. It is now leaking. But even a penny stove has its limitations. It's difficult to get into a bloom unless you have a technique to allow it to get into a bloom quicker. The flame on this new pot is far better. As we draw to an end here, some conclusions. The Trangia stove, never ever do what I did, is only fill it a little bit from dry and let it burn out. It ran on 30mm for well over 10 minutes. That was good. With a better pot on, it might have brought it to a boil a lot quicker. I think we're at a boil with this. You can see it's holding its boil pattern. Obviously still plenty of fuel left in the well. Let's see how long it can maintain this rolling boil. If it made it now to 9 minutes, I'd be impressed. So I've popped the lid back on to prevent debris and also to prevent the evaporation of steam. And I think that's flame out, 750. But we've achieved a boil, the fastest of all the stoves. It helped having the stainless steel, it helped having the air hole in the Beck stove, and it also helped having a slightly taller pot stand. Like I said, 1.25 inches, 1.5 is the sweet spot, and that will vary the stove itself I've just picked up in real time. That is cool, I can put that away. It did go through the fuel, didn't it? So it came to a boil the quickest, it went through the fuel the quickest as well. If I wanted to maintain a rolling boil to sterilise pugnant water, obviously I'd just put more than the 30ml I've allowed for the experiment. I'd put 50ml of fuel in and then keep that to sterilise the water for maybe 2-3 minutes. But the advice of the Welsh Water Board, when I had brown water running from my taps, had an email and someone knock at the door and say there's been a problem with the mains water supply, just bring it to a boil, you'll be fine. Although it was still brown water, and it's the same if you was in a survival situation. Don't worry about the colour of the water, just bring it to a boil. But if you're in any doubt, leave it for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, quarter of an hour, the amount of time you leave it at a rolling boil. I'm going to leave down to you and your decisions and your research, because it might vary between country and country, but here in Wales the advice, once it's boiled, it's killed all the pathogens, nothing can live. I'm not a fanboy of the Trangia stove, not that there's anything inherently wrong with it, I just don't get on with it. My little homemade stoves work, as you can see, quite effectively. Now there's a lot of subject matter in this little film regarding airflow, the type of pot to use, as well as the different types of stoves. The little homemade ones with the pot stand built in did equally as well as the Trangia, which needs a pot stand. The penny stove, difficult to light. There are techniques. The Trangia can be difficult to light. That is why I like the Bex stove, and the Wicking stove has a pot stand, comes to a bloom quickly, and once that air hole has been introduced, came to a boil the quickest, but it didn't maintain that rolling boil past 8 and a bit minutes. A couple of the others gave a longer burn, but it was slower to get there. In all honesty, I have my favourites, you'll have your favourites, and I'm not trying to persuade anyone to use one stove over the other, because it has no effect on me at all what other people use. I don't get upset that people like Trangias or gas stoves or wood stoves. I have a wood burning stove, it's the Kelly kettle. The other wood stoves that are on the market, I don't see why you're not building a fire directly on the ground. The logic behind a firebox stove isn't there for me. Alcohol stoves, I don't use a hell of a lot, not that I have anything against them. I do have gas stoves which I like, just because I'm that kind of age where I just want to screw on a can, bring water to a boil as quick as I can, and I'm not bothered about the gas running out. I can always build a fire, and usually I bring plenty of gas. I know how much to bring. The aluminium pots stay at home. I'm quite happy with the stainless steel, although it weighs a little. The GSI Glacier is lighter than my Pattern 58. That is my usual go-to. But interesting little experiment. I kind of knew the results of some of them. I really didn't expect a significant improvement putting the air hole in the Bex stove, but wow, that made one hell of a difference, having better air. If you want to have a go at making your own alcohol stoves, there are how-tos on this channel, but it's all data collected now to put up there and you'll have a better informed opinion of what you like. Until next time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you out there. Happy trails. I feel quite dizzy now.